This morning I was fumbling around with my microphone, like I'm talking, I'm like, I can see it registering, but the signal's not there. Turns out for like 6 minutes I was holding the wrong mic. So yeah, yeah, that's where I be fucking tripping. But yo, peace, everybody. Welcome back. Secret House Against, Tokyo-based hip-hop art and culture conversations, largely album discussions, underground, independent, avant-garde, experimental, abstract, all the dope shit from the underground. First and foremost, shout out to all of our patrons and all the other crews and people that we rock with. Noname Book Club, Rap Music Plug Podcast, Caltrops Press, Extraordinary Rap Podcast, Focus Hip Hop, State of the Game, Call Out Culture, so many more. Shout out to all of you guys. As you can see today, we're doing a little video joint. It's just me. Jet is at the crib, and I'm here with Dash Lewis, who I'll allow to introduce himself in just a minute. The album we're discussing today, as you can see in the title, is the new K the I and Kenny Segal collaborative project called Genuine Dexterity. It's 11 songs in 33 minutes, and it just dropped, I guess, today for you, right, Dash? It's still Friday over there. Yeah, so it just dropped today as we're recording. But Kiki KVI it was kind enough to shoot us the album. I want to say like 6 months ago. How long have we had this thing?
I mean, I've had it. I think you sent it to me at least in September, so it's been
okay.
It's been at least a few months.
Okay. So I maybe yeah. I just know that we've had it for quite a long time,
Yes,
and yeah. So what we like to do on the show, when we're discussing an artist that we haven't reviewed before, is talk about who they are, how we know them, and such. So first, KDI is a producer, rapper, MC, artist. He's been around for decades now. He's a real kind of OG in the game. Released albums on Mush and Big Data, and I think Ninja Tune, and definitely with Fake 4. Also several self-released projects over the last several years, but he hasn't released like an actual full-length rapper album since like 2012. And I think everybody knows Kenny Segal, the musician, producer, beat maker, artist, who's done so many collabs with people within the kind of the upper tier of the independent scene, Backwoodz artists, Rory, Rap Ferreira, Fuzzy Navel, Pink Navel last year, and so many just dope joints. He also had Maps with Woods. Was that last year or the year before? But
I believe that was last year.
yeah, so we both, yeah, I'm sure we both are familiar with or at least the audience is definitely familiar with Kenny Segal. So before we do that, I forgot to like introduce who you are. So you and I met through the Rap Music Plug podcast. Can you give us a like a little spiel about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name's Dash Lewis. I'm a musician and writer based in Richmond, Virginia. I'm a contributor at Pitchfork and Bandcamp, The Guardian, Stereogum, a whole slew of places. Been making music my entire life. Been a hip hop fan since I was 7 years old when my brother gave me a cassette copy of De La Soul is Dead.
Hey.
It is an honor to be here. I'm really excited to talk about this record. I love talking about music. I love talking about hip hop. I love talking about rap music. I love being confused by albums. And I love unpacking stuff together. I think this is going to be a fun time. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, absolutely, my pleasure. We were hoping to get together earlier in the year with the Alaska and Steel Tip Dove album,
right,
but we got really busy around that time, and also the internet was like a certain section of the internet was unleashing the wrath on you about that Eminem review.
Oh man, yeah, that was pretty brutal. That was pretty brutal.
I can imagine. I see them online and like, you know, on Reddit, and yeah, you know, props to him for building such a strong fan base. He has like a Beyonce hive mind type of community of people.
They are very loyal, and I don't know, it's on some level, I guess you got to hand it to him. On another level, it makes me worried about a lot of things. Just the people being unable to. I mean, there's stan culture in general. I think, which he started with Stan. You know, I think it's strange to think about how people can't deal with criticism of their favorites without attacking the people who are offering that criticism. And it's just an opinion. I mean, that's the thing.
Right.
I love when people say like, you're not objective in your reviews. I'm like, that's because I'm a person.
Right. Yeah.
People have opinions, and I'm in a position where sometimes I get paid to have these opinions, but they're still my opinions. So you can choose to listen to them and take them in and feel how you want to feel about them. But like telling me that you hope that my family dies because I didn't like a record that your favorite artist made is a little intense, and maybe you should
Yeah.
consider the implications of that and
Yeah.
what your fandom is doing to your brain. And that goes for anybody who's
Yeah.
a major fan of any pop artist or whatever. I see it happen constantly. But yeah, it was a brutal month. Just,
Yeah.
I got a hit piece written about me on Spin. Like it
Oh
was
wow.
insane.
I didn't see that one, but you know, we were all around as you dropped it, and everybody got a good laugh at it because um I don't know, like Eminem is such a huge figure in the culture that it's easy to compare and contrast him against other artists and what he actually does and what he says. And like you said, there's just, you know, people are going to have different experiences with him. I can appreciate, you know, his ability to put words together, but I've never been a fan of the guy's albums. I've never liked a single album. And I've been around that, you know, I was around when he was doing the freestyle, you know, the freestyles were coming out from the Wake Up Show and all these other radio stations. And we're like, yeah, this is really cool. But I just never liked him. And so ever since 8 Mile came out, I've been a vocal kind of hater of Eminem. And I think that I've come around in my older years. Like, I don't really feel the need to tear down a lot of these artists unless I'm having a serious conversation with people about it. But yeah, like, tap out, dude. Like, we get that shit with fans of like some of the artists we have on here. You know, Aesop Rock's got a huge following that thinks that he's the, you know, the best at everything and unassailable. And I just don't listen to music with the intention of putting somebody at like the top and everybody below them. It's like, I like Aesop for this reason, and it's a very different but similar reason that I might like Quelle Chris. You know, they're doing different things. Like, calm down. It's just a person's opinion. So cool,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, it's very weird. It's a weird thing, but yeah.
I'll make sure to link you link your work in your work, or where people can kind of tap into you inside of the bio. So excuse me, everybody pay attention to that. Dash is one of the few great writers that we have out there. So yeah, let's discuss how we're familiar with K the I. How did you get into his work?
So in 2003, I think 2003 or 4, I emailed Mush Records to be a part of their street team, and that was when you could still do that. I think at some point, somehow I ended up also on the Def Jux like promo list, so I was getting like those burn copies of Def Jux CDs with the robotic voice. It was like, this is a promo, and getting like stickers and promo CDs from Mush Records. For some reason, they were just like, yeah, this kid is excited. Let's just send him all this stuff. So it was like through that, and through, there was a website that I frequented called HipHop Infinity.
Oh yeah, JC Graves, is that his name?
I believe so. Yeah,
main guy?
I don't think he's active in any sort of music journalism anymore. But it was like a pretty formative thing for me. I also grew up in North Carolina, and so I was like very much steeped and during like the like No Limit Cash Money kind of thing, I was very steeped in Southern rap. And so when I discovered something like HipHop Infinity, and it took me into these new realms, new ideas, new possibilities of what hip hop was.
Mm-hmm.
It was really mind expanding. And then hearing artists on a label like Mush, like Radio Inactive, I think Blockhead put something out on that point. I mean, of course, like Aesop Rock put out Float on Mush, but hearing people take this art form that I knew a couple things about, and kind of twist it into these new shapes was really, really exciting. And I think that was my introduction with Kayla I.
Okay. Yeah, man. Yeah, like I was just talking to Blueprint about Hip Hop Infinity. Their year-end list with their top MCs, it's like so different than what you would get from like the Source or Blaze, magazine, something like that. It's like how is Boots Riley is like 3 on their list, and yeah, they were very formative for me as well too. One of the first places that I started ordering CDs from, at a certain point it was you couldn't just go to the store and find the new Black Alicious album or something like that, so I didn't get my KVI shit from there. I think I got it through trading tapes with homies through forums. I got an album, and I don't even know these artists anymore. Commodose, Beta One is like
Yo, yeah.
2002. Yeah, and it was like KDI, KO Flux, and I swear I've interacted with these guys online, maybe on like the SoulSeek chat board, like places like that. But yeah, it must have been about 2002 that I got hip to KDI, and then a few years later, he was doing work with some of my homies, and some like homies of homies in Hawaii, like Wormhole and my homie Slewage, and yeah, so I've known of his music since then, and then through the Anticom boards we had a few connections, and when we became friends on Facebook throughout the years, we've had a few connections, and just so happens that I hit him up about, like, I was listening to, I think the first album that came out on Mush was that Broken Love Letters, and I was like, yo, this Liza Minnelli track is so dope. You need to start rapping again. I want to hear a rap album. And he was like, yo, it's crazy. You just hit me up because I've got an album coming out on Backwoodz with Kenny Segal. And I was like, tight, perfect. And I was just happy for him. So I love Kiki. He's a great dude. And we're looking to bring him out here next year, hopefully. But yeah, man. So we both go back to about the same era in time when it comes to KDI, and that's something that I notice a lot of the people within the like the Discord, a lot of the younger cats, like the 19-25-year-olds, they don't know who KDI is like that. They don't realize he was on like the NMS projects, or he was helping Big Just out with production. They were living together. They don't have that kind of history. KDI seems to be one of those guys who, like, he was pretty big to have an album on Mush. You're doing pretty well in underground hip hop, or Big Data, or Ninja Tune, and even Fake Four to a degree. But yeah, a lot of people just aren't familiar with him or his type of styling. It sounds similar. We've got a lot of cats to do the stackaging now, but back then KDI was, I think, a little bit more of a unique fixture with his approach and his kind of bombastic voice and his strange production. A real kind of unique artist, KDI, I think.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I think that there was there was a sort of a movement within a movement during that time. There was like the what I guess we would now, and maybe even then, sort of derogatorily called backpacker music.
Yeah,
backpacker rap. It was definitely derogatory from a certain person, but there was also a bunch of people that were like, yeah, I don't know, I wear a backpack to the show, I get it.
yeah.
Stuff full of
That was me.
cans. Yeah, spray paint cans, CDs, posters, whatever. I was on the street team, so I had a backpack that was full of hip hop shit. It was great. But there was like, it had this connotation of being this sort of like cerebral, maybe conscious, maybe sort of like, there was a phrase that has been stuck in my mind for the past 2 decades of super scientifical, that I think like a lot of people sort of around our age would probably hear that and be like, okay, I know exactly who people were talking about when you hear super scientifical. But it was definitely that sort of like pushing things into the avant-garde, pushing the ideas of what a flow can be, like understanding that rhythm was much more malleable than maybe we thought it was, or maybe we had the frame of reference for, or something like that. And so those artists and that period of time, I think, they planted seeds that I think we're seeing now. Like I'm hesitant to. It's kind of a lazy comparison, and I'm hesitant to do it. I don't want to say that Backwoodz is the new Def Jokes or the new Mush, but it's carrying a similar torch to what those labels were doing. And Yeah, I think like I'll be really interested to see what someone who is like who's maybe in their early 20s, who's been following Woods or following Backwoodz, following Arm& Hammer. I'd be really interested to see how they react to this record because it has touchstones that if you're a fan of that sound, if you're a fan of that sort of movement, you could like kind of tap into, but it's also really difficult in a very specific way that I haven't really heard since like 2002, 2003. It's cool.
Yeah, especially when it comes to the flow is one thing, but it's also kind of the language that he's using and the stacking of all of these ideas and the way he puts things together that makes it a bit difficult to kind of apprehend for people. It's kind of that between line for me. KDI is like that East Coast hyper wordy kind of Def Jookish style that's still hard and street, but it also kind of leans into that West Coast weird stacking, almost chopping style that gets a little bit more abstract from your guys like Driver or Micah 9.
Mhm.
And he's also kind of in the maybe like interregnum between those eras. He's at the end of, he's dropping these albums on these labels. He's one of the last to come out on like Mush of the rappers that were there. Radio and Active didn't have anything planned through them, and Def Jux is falling apart, and the scene is changing, and now we have a community of artists, 20-year-olds who grew up, and they're like the first things that they're introduced to are that Def Jux sound, or they get into music and it's like, oh wow, there's Earl and Mike and all these things, and there's a lot of I don't want to diminish people's work, but I think something that Rap Ferrer said online the other day is kind of reasonable about how a lot of rap sounds inbred and stagnant now in terms of styles, because he's like, oh yeah, this guy must be a Woods fan or an Elusive fan
Mhm.
or especially a navy blue type of fan,
Mhm.
and KDI is an outlier when it comes to that. I'm excited for kids. I'm excited for this kind of like new school of people to find KDI. And to me, this is like a phenomenal album for him to come out with somebody like Kenny Segal, who is pushing the genre forward in musicality in sample-based hip-hop in a
Mhm.
way that many other producers are not, because KDI's production's crazy by itself, but this is kind of like bridging eras like Kenny Segal did with Self Jupiter, who is another one of those 30-year-old master stylers, and putting them together it's genius. And I'm glad that you're here to discuss this with me, just for the kind of our frame of reference historically when it comes to hip hop like that. I think that we could, everybody knows we know Kenny Segal for years now. Yeah. So maybe let's just get into the album in general now.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we kind of already were with this last part of the conversation, but for me, again, like I'm super happy for Kiki. I've always supported his career, but again, this is just an incredible album to introduce people into with that new audience. Kenny's production always creates this kind of canvas that gives MCs so much space to do what they do best, while emphasizing like their unique skill sets and idiosyncrasies. What's the term there? Anyways,
You got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like, but it's like they're not just beats, they're world building kind of
Mhm.
soundscapes full of depth, and a lot of that gives MCs like a wide berth for their styles and an approach to like fucking splash. And what really wonderful about Kenny is that his musicality as a jazz musician is working its way into the production on these albums, and he uses live instrumentation stems and things like that, but he also tweaks them and freaks them in a very hip-hop way, where you listen to a Roots album, it's like, oh, this is jazz hip-hop, or Avant Adele Bowling Club, it's like, oh, this is jazz hip-hop. But to me, this is jazz hip-hop full through and through, without it being like recognizable to my dad as jazz, who's a jazz head, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when you have a singular styler, and everybody on this album that's featured is one of these singular stylers who are like, I like to compare it to, and this is something I've picked up in conversations, like I compare them to the modern day jazzmen, except
Mhm.
for instead of walking around with his trumpet, Open Mike Eagle walks around with his style. And when you have these guys come together, you're basically having like a new jazz band set of these greats who are going to present their instrument in different ways and create this new kind of just high art, beautiful work. And KDI and Kenny Segal kill on every single moment of this album, and the features are so well considered, the sequencing is tremendous, and I am a huge fan of this album. I know there's a bias because I love KDI, and you want to see your favorites win, but I don't think that I'm being super biased in saying that this is one of the most interesting listens of the year, bare minimum. It's so tremendously interesting. It's a good album to me. I love it.
I think I would completely agree. And it also about it being, excuse me, two thoughts at once. I would definitely agree that it's one of the most interesting listens. It was one of the most interesting and maybe jarring first listens that I had this year. And then it was the most jarring second listen that I had this year. And it continues that sort of Backwoodz tradition of dropping something that is incredible right at the end of the year, kind of maybe as like a fuck you to end of year lists, the end of year lists like industry that is built up around the music journalism space, but also just like I don't know that I don't. The idea of time and the idea of album cycles just it kind of doesn't matter anymore. And so I like the idea that like someone like KDI, a label like Backwoodz can drop something like this record in December, knowing that it will still make an impact because it is so unique, it's so singular. I really like what you were saying about jazz. I was just in New York for the International Anthem, which is this label in Chicago. It's sort of like jazz, not jazz label. They had their 10-year anniversary sort of like showcase at this venue called Public Records in Brooklyn. And Jeff Parker, who's a former member of Tortoise, he's played with Yo La Tango and Natural Information Society, etc. The ETA Quartet had 2 shows, and then this band called SML had 2 shows. And it was really like, and then Anna Butters, their, I guess, quartet had a show the last night, and the players were all like, I think each group had at least 3 of the same players. And it was really interesting to watch these people go into these different permutations and come up with completely different sounds and completely different ideas about where music goes, how you experience it together. On the latest episode of The Next Movement, that really great hip hop podcast with Rob and E, they interviewed a Lucid, and they asked him about, he's been working with a bunch of jazz musicians like Luke Stewart and Shabaka Hutchings.
Right.
And they asked him about that, and he was like, he's fascinated by jazz because of that sort of permutation thing where you get a bunch of people who have a very singular idea and a very singular approach, and then you create these new combinations of where they sit here, like this bassist is going to play with this ensemble, these people are going to make a duo, and everything is always completely different. He called it people power, and I think it's true. It's very powerful to watch these kinds of things happen. And so when you get a record like this that is coming from someone who has honed his style that is completely unique over the past 30 plus years, and you put him on a track with Arm & Hammer, then you put him on a track with Jesse the Tree, put him on a track with Fatboy Sharif, and those songs sound like KDI songs, but they don't sound like KDI featuring X. They sound like these people have created a singular world that fits into this bigger idea of what KDI is trying to do. I mean, it's sort of like what we were talking about, or what you were talking about with Kenny Segal, how this sounds like a Kenny Segal record. These beats sound like Kenny Segal made them, but they don't sound like Maps. They don't sound like the Pink Navel record. They don't sound like Hiding Places. They don't sound like anything you did with Hemlock Ernst.
Right.
But
right.
it has his signatures. And so it's a testament to both K the I and Kenny Segal's level of skill and level of being able to I don't know, investment in their own ideas and in their own strengths and in their own vision. And then they can bring all these other people in. And granted, they're all from like sort of the Backwoodz extended universe, but none of the records that the guests have made sound like this record.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's all cohesive. It's a tremendous thing. I don't know. It's a really interesting thing to process.
Yeah, it does highlight like the refinement of sorry, I'm still waking up. Like I woke up like 30 minutes before I got on with you. Had a crazy night last night, but it does kind of show you the refinement that everybody has and the confidence that they have in their tool bag to be able to approach all of these things. Any single one of these verses from the artist features, which we have like Arm & Hammer, Self Jupiter, Jesse the Tree, Open Mike Eagle, Fatboy Sharif. Am I missing anybody? I think
I don't think
that's
so.
everybody, right?
Yeah, I think that's everybody.
And of course a bunch of perhaps oh right, Curly Castro and Prim and Shrapnel. But every single verse on this album could be, their verse of the year. They came in and they recognized like, okay, we're playing, if we get up there and I play the wrong key, Miles is going to throw glare at me, to pissed off. And these guys, you could tell that it almost sounds like they're in studio together. That's how cohesive it sounds with this. It sounds like a perfect Jesse the Tree track, but it's also K the I too. It sounds like all of these guys fit in perfectly. And like you said, they're a part of that same kind of biosphere, that ecosystem of of hip hop. But man, K the I's style to me is just so amazing, and I'm glad to see. I'm a person. I call this, when I used to rap, like we were big fans of all of the West Coast double time sing song stylers like Micah 9, but also the hyper kind of wordy cats like Aesop Rock, and even long sentence, run on sentence LP before Fantastic Damage. And me and the homie used to call it stackaging, like stacking ideas and stacking rhymes that didn't necessarily have a a clear like creative writer sense to it. Like I'm in this song, I'm a pencil, and everything is about a pencil metaphor, similes. It would just stack ideas. Sometimes it seems pretty incoherent. A person might listen to it and call it word salad, but I've always loved that style, this kind of idea that language is a virus, and sometimes these thoughts are going to affect you in different ways. And when it comes to K the I style, like I said earlier, he's kind of in that between, but he also has that very unique voice and sound, the tone of his voice. He's so bombastic, and he has these long poet stackage rants almost of just packed with emotion. And there's like a hard collision between very vivid, personal things about himself, but also this kind of like airy, illusory type of world that he's building there. He will say something that's like a new sentence combination of words, and then say some shit like, I was late for work twice this week. And you know what I mean? Like that type of this type of thing where it's like you're getting hit with things. It's so much, somebody's just beating your ass with words, and then there's a clearing, and then you're like, oh, and then you're just back to figuring out what it is. And I don't listen to K the I to try to put together the puzzle and figure out exactly what he's trying to tell me. Sometimes it becomes more clear than others, but he is one of those artists that's an abstract stackage poet, and you can't go into this album in the same way uh, as a person that would respect lyricism and the way words are put together. You can't go into this album and expect to kind of pick it apart and come up with a dissertation like you would a Lupe type of styler. And that's what I really love about this. Like on this, I'm picking up little differences in his style versus some of the other guys in the in the biosphere ecosystem of independent hip hop. The way that he will bomb you with like this syllable count, and then he'll end with like a hard assonance, like triple word stack, like seagull, evil, eagle, regal, fly. And then it's like he does this thing with his flow where it almost, if you're not paying attention, it's like, oh, he raps the same all the time. But no, he's changing the meter, he's changing the speed, and he adds these little formerly known, shown, blown explosions that nobody else is doing. It's very unique, and KDI is just super ill on every track here.
Absolutely. I think that's something that only in the past few days have I really stopped trying to pick apart what was going on the record, because I kept being like, I don't know, I write music criticism, and I pride myself on being able to like pick out themes and find sort of like these threads that have been these complex threads that go throughout the entire record, and I can't do it with this record, and it was frustrating me. And then I realized, like, I don't know if that's the point. I think there are definitely things that pop up. Like there's a climate change thing that comes up a few times. There's a lot of personal stuff. I love the moment where it's sort of like I was late to work, but he goes, "We're all fucked."
Yeah.
Medley, and then just like goes into something else, and you're just like,
yeah.
Hold on. And it's this like kind of stream of consciousness, but it's not tossed off. Like he is allowing, it's kind of like, I wonder what his writing process is. There's a really good Caltrops interview with him. He does, shout out to Caltrops, but he does that raps and crafts thing on his Tumblr, and it's the same questions, which I think is really fascinating, a fascinating way to conduct interviews. Same questions to every rapper that he sends them to. It's all about writing, and it's really cool to. I think I lost my point a little bit here, but I was really excited about reading.
Well, you were talking about your like analytical instrument and trying to pick apart the through lines through his music, and you've given up on that a bit.
I don't know if that's the point, and I don't think that was what KDI was saying in that interview. Even it was just like, I think he tends, from what I understand from that interview and what I get from listening to his music for a couple decades now, is that I think he gives every idea the amount of care and love and attention that he needs to give it, and then he moves on to the next one, and it's not at our pace, and it doesn't have to be at our pace. And I really love, I think that comes through in the rhythm and in the flows that he deploys. There is not a single moment that I could have predicted what kind of pocket he was going to get into on any of these beats. And he does, I mean, one of the things that he does, it's kind of a trademark for him, is like spacious beginning and then everything crammed into the end here. But it never goes off beat. It never feels like he's written too many syllables and he's trying to cram it in. It all feels really intentional. And it's like he can see the other idea cresting the hill and is racing to get it, but this idea isn't finished yet. And watching someone do that, we get like a really beautiful scope or view into the way his brain works, I think, with this record. And it's like pairing him with Kenny Segal, I think, makes this maybe more accessible than some of his older work, especially for young folks who did not come up in that era and are now just getting to know him. But like, it is, it's fascinating the way that he writes and the way that he raps.
One of the things that I think really works well on the album too is the choruses. The choruses become kind of like little earworms that you kind of want to, even if you're not planning on like rocking with the song, which I did, but like the choruses tend to be pretty simple. Like I bet that I could touch the sky so easily,
That's what
and
I was gonna bring up. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a lot of moments on that. Like the songcraft is really good. You're bombarded by like these emotional, aggressive, just dope type of stackage raps of all different varying emotional, in the emotional spectrum. He might be talking about something political or something day to day observational like a comedian, or maybe your girl blows his didgeridoo, you know what I mean, like that type of thing. But the choruses are just like they open up, and there's a space for you to kind of rock with them, and it's the weirdest type of pop sensation because it doesn't really work. It's not, I don't think it's supposed to work like that with independent weird hip hop, where it's like that catchy type of let me keep going back to this for the chorus and then just being washed over by a lot of the lyrics. And what I like again is that, like the choruses, you'll be bombarded with so many hard things that are, I try to write the lyrics for some of this shit and I'm just like, no, not fucking happening. But
No.
I'm picking up things like on the first track, Ionosphere, he says we speak in tongues amongst the smother words together, and it's just like, oh, that glossolalia, that kind of being open to the universe and just spraying out these ideas. That's what I get. That's the spell casting that Elucid talks about. That's that griot tradition of orally, disseminating the world to the masses. It's a really amazing type of thing. And then he'll just let you, what was that line you said, or we're all fucked medley? I
Yeah.
actually did write a few of the lines right before that. That's on A Little Bit, that which is such a dope track, that kind of piano and spacey atmospheric type of shit. But he says, and I'm not even going to try to approach his cadence with this. I'm just going to read the words like a like a poetry teacher or some shit. But he says, due to my behavior, labor made paper so complicated. Also felt obligated. Head for the hills without spilling over my cup. Half image. Condensation conducts. We're all fucked medley. Now, of course, the line like due to my behavior, labor made paper complicated, that's pretty easy to follow. Also felt obligated, pretty easy to follow. Head for the hills without spilling over my cup. Half image. And to me, I was getting a vision of like the optimist, half
Mhm.
full, half empty, condensation conducts, things leave. And while that's all just me projecting into what's being said, so many of the lyrics on this album leave you that kind of transcendental space of critique where you can apply these thoughts and make your own connections to perhaps change the way you feel about the day, or to like what I've done here with that we're all fucked medley. That's that optimism pessimism type of thing that all of us are dealing with, this up and down and stress and aggravation and alienation, and it's just great. And while being bombarded with that, you have the wonderful chorus. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little more than that, like it's all intact, it's all fact intact. And then he switches a little bit less, a little, and it's just like it would be good even just read as poetry, but Kenny Segal's got his whole fucking ass in this. It is just amazing. What with our show, we usually when we record here in studio, I love to have the ability to play a little bit of the song to remind us of it and get into it. And that's one of the reasons I don't much love doing the line thing. It's a little bit harder to do all that and the quality or whatever. But man, I would play that right now. I would play Warhammer right now just to point out lines like I take the rest of the day off shadow boxing with toxins, the horns, the percussion, like crushed heavenly with shrapnel. Oh my god, that bass line and that horn. Is it a train? I don't know. It sounds like some real crazy crime jazz shit. It's so incredible. And that the line from Castro, dealing from a rebel deck could leave the bombs atomically. Rebel INS, inspect the deck. These fools are all firing on point. I could you know, one thing that I tend to do, because I'm a super scientifical rambler when it comes to this shit, is like I just have notes and notes that are like kind of just random and sporadic that I keep on hand just to just in case we discuss a track. What were some of your favorites on this? And you know, like maybe we could touch base on some of the tracks now.
Some of my favorites. Well, first, I do want to say that what I love about right before Castro comes in, he says, "Got to learn from your elders,"
Yeah,
and that feels like both a hat
OG.
tip to K the I, but also like his. I mean, Castro's verses are always so reference heavy and so reverential of the craft and the culture, and so it feels like he understands who he is, where he is in the culture, what a lot of like what it seems like his purpose, or he thinks his purpose is as a rapper, but he also understands that it's crazy to be on a track with K the I in 2024. That is really like I love that so much. But I have some notes that a lot of them are like when I stopped trying to make sense of the lyrics and just sort of catch the vibe. What I really love is how textural this record is, and K the I's lyrics and his flow and his voice all come together. They complement Kenny Segal's textures so well. It becomes this sort of psychedelic wash of rhythm and a rhythm, but of texture. I keep saying that word, but it's just like there are so many of his beats feel kind of broken and they stumble along and they seem like samples get triggered at the wrong time, and like maybe there's distortion. Like there's Local Anastasia with Open Mike Eagle. That beat sounds kind of like a Boards of Canada song, and it's cool because it makes like I've always listened to Board of Canada and been like, what would it sound like if someone rapped over some of this stuff? And then they kind of made that song, and it's like really beautiful and pastoral, but electronic in this sort of hauntological way. It feels like out of time. It feels very modern. It feels very contemporary, but it also feels like it could have existed at any point in the past 40 years. Yeah. It's really, really interesting. Spellcasted Television with Arm & Hammer, that beat, like the kicks on that, like the kick drums sound like they're like nudging against the ceiling. They're like distorted enough that you won't notice it on your first listen, but the longer you listen, you realize that like they're peeking into the red. And like, not every other instrument is doing that. It's just the kick drums. And so it's fascinating to think about like, okay, K the I has this idea about texture and rhythm with his voice. He's got that Boston accent. And then Kenny Segal has this idea about like, maybe it's accidental and he leaves it in, but like, that's also a really deliberate choice once you do that. Like creating these things that don't feel. There's one song, it might be the one with Shrapnel, where as the samples kind of fade out, you realize that there's either a sample or maybe it's Kenny himself playing, I forget the name of the percussion instrument, but it's that long string that has the shells with a little like bead inside, and you shake it, and it just sounds like you realize that has been just going in the background the entire time. There's so much of that where like it's kind of impossible. It's like looking at a waterfall. You know, you stand in front of a waterfall and you can follow one piece of water all the way down, or you can just take the whole thing in. And both of them are very valid and very different experiences. And
I agree, and I like what you're saying about the textures on the album. You know, even KDI's voice is a texture. The tone of his voice works so very well, but and also the kind of Boards of Canada hauntological element of like kind of timeless. To me, you know, you talk about textures. The way that I was envisioning my head was almost like a landscape, kind of like a scene from a movie, like a. You know, you drive out to the desert and it's like, boom, it's, you know, the desert, but you have the right cinematographer with that lens to focus in on things or bring things into view. And that's what's always going on in these Kenny beats. It's never just like, here's a bass line, here's the drums, here's like a fuzz sample that maybe I pan left to right. There's all of these little things that you don't realize are happening. Like on Crush Heavenly, the Shrapnel track, I got this ringing that I've been trying to. Okay. Yeah, I've got like this ringing that's going on over here. But on the Rap Music Plug podcast listening party, Kenny said, somebody said, this sounds familiar to me, and he said, oh, those are the same chords that I use on Zen Scientist with the Rhodes for Rap Ferreira's, one of Rap Ferreira's albums. And it's just like there's so many parts on this that he was working with musicians and chopping things and doing things so differently. The way that he puts together a beat is never just like a beat. They're always like, they're almost like creating new worlds and environments, and they put you in a place, and the place doesn't feel empty. But just because it doesn't feel empty doesn't mean that it's like dominating. It just means that your eye is drawn to different things, or being your ears actually, but for the analogy, your eye is drawn to different things in the scene, and he's got such a great ear for that type of shit. I was, before the Rap Music Plug podcast, before everybody got in, me and Chong were in there. Chong Wizard, shout out Chong Wizard Records. We were talking about how jazzy Kenny Segal's beats are, right? And on this album, he does have a lot of things going on here that are very much from that kind of Los Angeles jazz scene of just all these incredible experimental type of cats. Like he said that the track Opening Night, a series of sabbatical mishaps, which is the closer for the album, he said that track is from a member of the Human Error Club, which is a jazz, I think, quartet, and a person named Lion Milk. I may be wrong on all the facts here because I feel like I just heard him say it in passing, but Lion Milk is an artist named Mokichi Kawaguchi, I think, a pianist. And all the song, like the song is just all these tiny loops of them just repeated, and then some I think he said a person named Diego plays the Rhodes over it. And you would expect musicians like that for this music to sound more like jazz, to where a jazz head would be like, yeah, this is jazzy, this is jazz. But no, it sounds completely like electronica or hip hop or all of these things, man. The way that I'm still thinking so much about like the texture ideas, because there is so many different textures on this album. In the sequencing, sometimes you're like, damn, I'm crushed out heavenly, and then it kind of opens up and it's like, that's nice. And then you've got this really wonky, crazy beat, Season of the Sickness with Fatboy Sharif, that sounds like a fucking it's one of the most disgusting beats of the year. And I say disgusting meaning just fucking raw. It is so wild. Like, how does anybody approach that track rapping? And then KDI kills it. And then Fatboy Sharif comes in with this vocal effect over his voice where he sounds like some evil Wizard of Oz giant head. And he's talking about like lobster bisque, but that beat is so crazy. It sounds like a cartoon factory that develops nuclear weapons or something. It's unbelievable. And then it just opens up into immediate eminent immunity with Jesse the Tree, which is again beautiful.
Yeah,
it's a crazy listen, this album. It's
those two tracks, excuse me, Season of the Sickness and Opening Night, I did want to talk about, especially because I wrote a note earlier today when I was listening to it for, I don't know, the third time today or something. I wrote that Fatboy Sharif sounds like a computer virus on that song. He sounds like your computer. Like, there's an X-Files episode where it's called Ghost in the Shell, and it's like they're in an FBI building or some government building, and like the computer's trying to kill everybody. And I feel like that's just Fatboy Sharif just coming in being like, I don't know, lobster bisque, it's poison. And
then the Season of the Sick Lobster bisque. Yeah, it's crazy.
And then on Opening Night, all the road stuff, that's crazy that it's Lion Milk. That's really cool I love Lion Milk.
Okay.
And all the roads on that reminded me of like Lonnie Liston Smith. And it felt like that portion of that song was like someone had just found walking through the alleys of Richmond where Lonnie Liston Smith is from, and found like one of his old records and put it on, and it sounded warped and fucked up, but it still has that warmth from the Rhodes. It still has that sort of like dreamy, rippling quality. It's astonishing that there's so much to listen to on this record, and like you and I have had it for so many months, and
Yeah.
I don't have a cohesive thesis about it because I'm still discovering so much. I'm still pulling all these threads apart. It's
Yeah.
like it's one of the most exciting things I think I've heard all year.
It is truly a really engaging album that you could listen to multiple times and just find new things. It's a rewatchable type of things. You know, it rewards your your academic intent for it. If you want to find something out about it and you listen and try to figure it out, you're going to pick apart these little things. You're going to see something new in the scene. Something, you're going to hear something different, and so many styles on it too. It's just, we haven't even talked about Self Jupiter, and
Oh my
Self
God.
Jupiter, what he's doing now, like his shit is like just poetry essentially. It sounds like it could come out of a poetry book, and it's like a, I don't know, like an infinite haiku, like a haiku with no syllable limits. It just, he's saying shit like Chestnut Grove, wind blows, the abalone seashell, wind chimes. It's crazy, like, but
Yeah,
it all works so perfectly, man. This
it's so
I
vivid.
I always, one of the things about our channel is that more recently in the last 2 years or so, since it's been mostly me and Jet, we don't do like album critiques so much as we talk about the things that we love. We don't want to tear down anybody in this community who are independent artists and working hard. If we review Kendrick, I got shots because I'm just one drop in the bucket of opinions when it comes to that. But as a person who may be one of the only KDI album reviews, or one of the only whoever album reviews like in our community, I'm not going to ever approach the reviews in a negative way. So our channel always sounds like I love everything. But with this one, I really, really love it. And I know that a lot of people want to hear more divisive and critical opinions about things, but I don't think that I have anything critical to say about this album because it tickles all of my sensibilities when it comes to hip hop. It's got the dope lyrics, the dope features, the dope beats, it's sequencing. Everything on this album is firing on all cylinders. And me and Jed are talking about our year-end list, and we're trying to phase that out. I think this year we're going to have our favorite album and then 15 albums that we love
Yeah,
instead of 1, 2, 3, because I can't rightfully compare this album, which I love, to say a Lucid's album that I love. They're
sure.
doing entirely different things, and I love them for the same reasons. And what am I going to say? Like, I'm going to play one more than the other? To me, that's not reflective of, like, Lucid's album's pretty brutal. I don't just turn that on a sunny day. But this one, I might want to hear him, KDI talking about, a girl on his didgeridoo. This album I love, Dash. I love this album. And if I was one to like make, assign numerical values to it, definitely like an 8 to me. Like a high 7, high 8, 9 or 10. That doesn't do anything, right? Like, yeah, it's like it's either the best ever or like one of the best. I just love this one, man. Like
I completely agree. I think this is a really special, really unique record. It I would be very curious to read what anyone, if anyone, is going to write anything about it, because it is so. If I were to give it one sort of like, I don't know, negative criticism, if you would call it negative, is that it's just really hard to follow sometimes. But I gained so much more from it when I stopped trying to follow it. It gave much more back to me when I stopped trying to project some sort of thing. I think, like I said, I think that there's some talk about climate change. I think that there's some like stuff about aging. I think that there's some like existential things that we could probably find in every record that's been released this year that we like. But it also doesn't matter because it's such a joy to listen to. And it's like, it's people that are at the top of their craft, that have, like Castro likes to say, like studied the blade or whatever. These people, these musicians who got together on this record really understand what it is that they're trying to do. And it's like watching the NBA or something. Like, you may not have a team that you like, or you may not really understand basketball, but it's really cool to watch people be really good at what they do.
Yeah.
Like, that is really rewarding. And so, like, going into it thinking that it's gonna tell this story, or it's gonna be this sort of like important marker of this time that we're living in, is maybe the wrong way to look at it. And maybe it's just like, do you like dope hip hop?
Yeah.
Do you like good lyrics? Do you like good flows? Do you like good beats? Go
What type
further
of
into that.
emotions does this elicit from you? How does this make you feel emotionally? Like, what are you? Yeah, like I'm a person that loves deep, dense lyricism as much as the next person. The guys who are really great at using all the poetic devices, the double, triple, hextuple entendre type of battle rap cats. But I also love like sci-fi films.
Mhm.
And sometimes, a sci-fi film is not going to be like a Coen Brothers film. Sometimes a sci-fi film is going to fire on different like cylinders and try to achieve something different. And that's what this album kind of does for me. It's a really incredible kind of like futurist sci-fi type of experience. It's also kind of uh juvenile and childish and fun, and it's also got the depth of like human emotion to it. And I'm not sure about how to precisely explain any of those things here,
Mhm.
but it's given me that hell yeah, bro. That movie was awesome. I didn't just walk out of The Godfather 2, but oh my god, let's run that one back, because that fight scene when Open Mike Eagle was like, yo, oh, that was great. Yeah, I this one tremendous. How about final thoughts? Or are we have we already talked our asses off about this, or do you have any other thoughts on it?
I think the thing that really helps unlock this record for me is, um, I mean, to anyone who may not be familiar with any of my work, and that, which is great and fine. Um, I listen to a ton of music all the time. I write about a ton of music all the time. So it means that, like, I have a very specific way, especially if I'm writing about something or want to write about something. I have a very specific way that I listen to it. And I listen to things over and over again. I take notes and all this kind of stuff. And what really unlocked this record for me was putting it on my headphones, walking out the door, and just taking a walk, and just like ending up where I end up. And the first time I did that, I was like, oh, this. I already thought that the record was incredible on a technical level, but it hit me emotionally. I saw all these things in my neighborhood that I hadn't noticed before. It kind of unlocked. I don't exactly know how to explain it, but it like just going for a walk and experiencing the record without trying to get something from it unlocked it in a way that I don't think I could have done any other way. I would, if you have the ability to put it on some headphones and just take a 33-minute walk in your neighborhood, I think you will have a great, great time with this record.
That makes perfect sense to me, because out here in Tokyo we don't have cars. I've been walking around with this album on headphones, multiple times in my listening. And just last night, I was jamming it, and getting ready to kind of record this morning, having a street beer, and I was having such a good time, smile on my face. Maybe I was more approachable, but a Japanese dude came up to me, started complimenting my shoes. We had a conversation. He bought me a drink. Another Japanese dude came up to us, started talking about hip hop because he heard us mention Slum Village. And these fools got me super drunk last night and dragged me to a really cool bar. And then I was like, one of them was like chopping it up with some ladies, and I was like, yo, I gotta go. I gotta record in like 6 hours. But yeah, man, it was just, this is just a really good, fun listen that I would recommend to anybody. Do you have like your 2 or 3 favorite tracks off the album before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I think opening night, the final track is
Mm,
just a really remarkable track. I love Local Anesthesia. partly because of what I mentioned before, the Boards of Canada feel, but I love the interplay between K the I and Open Mike Eagle. That's a combination that I would never have thought to put together. It works so well. Such a good song. And the opener, Ionosphere, I think is just like, it really sets the tone for the record. I think about that drum pattern all the time. But yeah, I think I probably, the more I listen to it, the more my favorites will shift and change and warp. And like, I think this is just one of those things that's going to be so rewarding for so long that like what I love right now may change. And what really connects with me in 2 weeks is going to be different than to what it was today. It's a really special one.
My favorites have changed almost every single time I listen to the album. I'm like, oh, this is my new favorite. As of last night, so release day, my favorites are the last track, Opening Night. I also like a little bit. Is that the full title of it? Yeah, a little bit, track 3, and Spellcasted Television. I haven't watched the video. They just released the video of this. Did you see it yet?
I haven't seen the video either.
Okay, I guess it comes out. It's supposed to come out on midnight, is what he said yesterday. So maybe that's a few hours for you guys. But no, it's out because I sent it to the homie and it was like premieres in 2 hours. So okay. It's animated, completely animated, and it's done by Quelle Chris. And the whole scene is Gotcha Man, which is Kenny and KDI on the cover. It's amazing. I haven't seen the full thing, but KDI sent me like a minute clip of it last week. And is Quelle Chris like just the most? Is he like the Leonardo da Vinci of our time? He's so talented at everything, dude. Production, rapping, playing music now, like animating. The guy is crazy.
I mean, I saw on November 8th, Andre 3000 came to Richmond, and on that tour, they've been bringing out someone new to jam with them every show, and they brought out Quelle.
Oh, what?
And I couldn't see what he was playing, but he was like bopping his head the entire time. And before he played, really beautiful, atmospheric, like kind of like they're tapping into some Don Cherry kind of shit. Then after he came out, there was this like kind of ethereal thing, as if he was maybe doing a bunch of drones that were based on vocal samples or something. He just brought something new. One thing I did want to say before we go, especially about Spellcasted Television, is that one line that Wood says, I pick beats that'll remind you to take your meds. Which is like,
yeah, man.
It's so good. It's so good.
Woods has always got like these really poignant bars that have never been said but make perfect sense. What did he say? Police came to my show and stayed till it finished. You already know I checked if they bought tickets.
And they did.
And they did. Oh man. Yeah, that's incredible. I think somebody was saying that like maybe he sent it to maybe Kenny sent the beat like a beat pack, and that one was in there for Elucid or something, and Elucid was like, yo, we need this for diabetic test strips, right? And then they're like, nah, actually somebody's already got that. So that one very well could have been on an Arm & Hammer track, but instead it's just a fucking, I think that's the one. I could be wrong. I'm dumb as hell and also an idiot. But but man, Dash, but plug where we can find you online.
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on pretty much every social media apparatus. It's just Gardener Jams, GardenerJams. I don't really fuck with threads. I don't know why you would, but if you want to find me there, you can see some stuff I posted. But mostly, I'm on Blue Sky, Instagram, still on Twitter for the foreseeable future, until that explodes, which it may do anytime. But yeah. Gardener Jam, same name across, and I always post about things I'm writing about. I'm posting about things that I find interesting, music that I don't get a chance to write about, but that I love. And if you want to talk to me about music, I'm always here for it. It's my favorite thing in the world. Yeah. So come find me.
Man. Thank you so much, dude. Like I really respect your writing and appreciate your analytical instrument, so to speak. And also the long, rich history you have in the culture is always fascinating and fun. Especially when we're around like the little cats in the Discord, you know, the little 19, 20-year olds who know everything but weren't around for those street team moments or hip hop infinity. So, man, hey, I'm next year we're going to be doing a few different things with the channel, and one of them that I intend on doing is to have more of these type of non-local meeting of minds, whether it's about reviewing an album or perhaps discussing some topic that's not so topical. You know, I'm not trying to follow the news cycle and be like, oh, did you hear fucking somebody called somebody something? I don't. We're not going to do that, but we, you know, like that conversation about that tweet from Rory, which I found interesting. A lot of hip hop is inbred and stagnant. I think that's a pretty interesting conversation to have for all of its pros and cons and contradictions. But I definitely will be keeping in touch with you. Obviously, we're on the same Discord. Thank you again, man. And yeah, I'll just call it. Oh, here's the Patreons. And then yeah, I'll cut out the rest, Dash. But yeah, that'll be it, man. Thank you so much, dude. I had a really great time discussing hip hop with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an
Yeah.
absolute blast. I can't wait to come back and chop it up with you about whatever else.
Yeah, man. I'll definitely keep in touch with you regarding that. You know, when I get some albums that are, you know, early releases from the homies, I'll ask them if I could shoot it to you too, and you know do that type of thing. So yeah, we'll see what we can do, bro. Thank you so
Sounds
much
great,
for
man.
your time tonight.
Yeah.
I'll let you get out of here, and I think I need to get another cup of coffee or something in me because I'm a little bit crazy still. But but yeah, man, peace, dude. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Farewell.
Bye.
Peace.